saw Bobby over here. I don't know if he was moving anything or what. Boy, Bob's trying to get me started early. Not quite live yet. There we are. There we are. All right. Welcome to all of you tonight. I have some trepidation about tonight's material because I'm absolutely not qualified to speak on the subject. But what I want to do is try to suggest some things that maybe you haven't noticed and offer some insight in that respect that might help you in studying this. We're looking at Proverbs 31, and there are two main areas of Proverbs 31. It starts off with warnings to a king that don't indulge in strong drink because there are some consequences. And the beginning at verse 10 through the end of the chapter is some declarations about the virtuous woman. Before we get started, though, I'd like to ask, let's see, Jeff, could I get you to lead us in a word of prayer? Okay, let me start off with some rather obvious questions. Let's see, I need to get my Bible up and running first of all. I'm going to read verse 1. The words of King Lemuel, the prophecy that his mother taught him. All right, an obvious question. Who wrote Proverbs 31? It's not a trick question.
Well, just because I researched it a little bit, it states it's from King Lemuel, but it's possibly a pen name for Solomon.
Yeah, and that's the same thing I've come up with as well. Just like King Agur in chapter 30, this is the only place the name is mentioned. So even though we might consider that as a possibility, we have no way of proving it at all. But I want to push back just a little bit on King Lemuel writing it. Is that where he got his source material? And if not, where did King Lemuel get his source material from? His mother. Now think about what that means. We have Hannah's prayer for a child concerning Samuel. We have short discussions that go on with some of the women surrounding Jesus at the cross and some of the things they did. This, in effect, would be the longest chapter in the Bible that a woman or female character contributed to very heavily, because Lemuel says the oracle or the prophecies that his mother taught him. So what he's doing is he's thinking back over the years to things his mother taught him and saying those things were important, those things are valuable, and they're important for me to record for others to benefit from. But they stem from the words of a woman. Another thing that comes up, who is the primary audience for these prophecies? So it's Lemuel. Now, what is true about Lemuel? What gender is he? Male. So why is it that people sometimes look at this chapter and saying, I want an excellent wife, I want a virtuous wife. Here are all the qualifications of a virtuous wife. That is not fair at all to women of any kind. Same kind of thing that happens when we look at fruit of the Spirit. Do all of us possess fruit of the Spirit? Well, we may possess it to some degree, but I'll tell you, I'm working on a lot of them. Usually when I get to the bottom of the list, I'm back at the top trying to figure out what more, or what have I forgotten, or what more do I need to add. And so bear in mind that when we talk about some of these things, we're talking, I'm talking about it from a male perspective. And that's not always the best thing to do. All right. Let's go ahead and go on a little bit because there's some things I want you to notice here. It starts with, in verse 2, it starts with a rhetorical question. He's not really asking for an answer. What shall I say? We're not exactly sure about what that means, but it comes in form. First of all, what shall I say? This is his mother speaking to Lemuel. What's important for me to say to you as a son that is going to become a prince, that's going to become a king? What's important? That's where this is coming from. It's not that she's confused about what should be mentioned. It's that nothing else can compare in importance with some of the things I'm going to relate to you about serving God and demonstrating that in your life. And so I want you to get that because that's really the heart of what she's saying. Son of my womb, a very close relationship with her son. Son of my vows. We don't know for sure, it's not recorded, but it wouldn't surprise me that she prayed to God about having a son, and that if she had a son, she would dedicate him towards service of God in some form. That's what Hannah did, and she was to be commended for that. And so there's a little bit of that flavor in there as well. All right, then we get down into verse 3. Do not spend your strength or your vigor. And basically, even though there are some sexual overtones there, I like to lift it up a little bit higher and ask the question, or make the point, don't waste your time and energy pursuing things that are not going to be of value. And that's her main point. Is you don't have a lot of time. Don't waste that time, those efforts, pursuing things that are selfish in nature, things that don't lead to something positive. And even though there are some sexual aspects there, I'm not planning on going into that anymore. But that's really where she's coming from. Let's see, what else can we get into?
Lemuel is the name of Solomon. Then the mother is Bathsheba.
That's right. And that does, if you ask me, do I favor that kind of a release? I'll tell you, I have trouble with Solomon as the best commentator on marital relationships. He had 300 wives, 1,000 concubines. He's not going to be my first choice.
He certainly had a few of them to understand.
You can argue that, yes. Brian.
It was probably, and I was going down the same thought that Rick was, if Lemuel was Solomon, then Bathsheba would have had quite a bit to coach him on because of what she went through with Uriah and the loss
Yeah.
of her son from the sexual exchange with David. You know, she lost that child.
Yeah.
So she's going to have some warnings, be careful.
And that is probably about the strongest argument I think you could make for it being Solomon, is because the experience she's had, the experiences that Bathsheba had. But again, we just don't know.
First child, Solomon
Yeah.
would have been the child she was praying and vowing
Yeah.
for, not to lose him.
So, but pursue it on your own and consider this. Now we get into something that I want you to pay a little more close attention to because of the way that it is presented. Oh, go ahead, Brad.
Well, in addition, adding on to Brian's, giving your strength to women those ways you destroy kings. From her experience with David, she saw how that sin of David's destroyed
Yeah.
him. And she saw how it caused him so much grief.
Yeah.
Grief and pain. And the other thought I had when I read verse 3 was my mind went back to Samson and Delilah.
Okay.
As
Yeah.
Samson gave his strength to her almost literally.
Yeah. And that would have been a story that they knew because, and prospectively, these Proverbs were written in the time of Solomon, even at the end of the chapter. And Samson came before that, so they would have known about that. Okay? Jump over now to verse 4. It is not for kings, or Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor princes to strong drink. Now, she's going to do something that is a little bit different. Normally, when we read warnings about alcohol, we read, don't do it. Well, Lemuel's mother is going to say, not only don't do it, I want to tell you why don't do it. It's not appropriate for kings to engage in strong drink. She's going to follow that up with, why is that? Lest they drink and forget the law. Verse 5. And pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted. She's pointing out that in order for you to be a proper judge, you need to be clear thinking. And that's the very thing strong drink takes away from you. And so this is one area I find fascinating, that she's not only saying, here's the warning, here's why the warning is given. Verse 6, give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that be of heavy hearts. That is tough. Brian.
This is another pointer that, to me, pointed to Bathsheba. If you remember, when Uriah came back with the report how the battle was going to King David, David tried to get him drunk.
Yeah.
And that was a perversion of his justice as a king. And he was trying to cover his sin.
Yeah.
By making Uriah get drunk and go home and be with Bathsheba for the night.
Again, that's not the way a king should be behaving, is it?
Perversion of justice.
So, yeah. So there are a lot of those elements that are here that are present. But this one, that it does confuse me a little bit, and I'll offer you a thought, but that's about as much as I can really do. In fact, I think I'm one slide behind. I'm going to advance that. We have to do the same thing here. All right. So one of the things that you stop and think about, he says, strong drink for those that are perishing. Most commentators I've come across say this is probably an idea of pain relief. A person that is dying, that is in extreme pain. What typically happens near the end of life? What happens to people that are in hospice generally, nearing the end of their life? Anyone know?
Well, under hospice, their pain is controlled.
With what?
Meds.
Morphine, specifically, of an extremely potent narcotic. And just a tiny bit is enough to relieve some of the pain, the anxiety. Paul did the same thing when he said, Timothy, take a little wine for your stomach's sake. They tried to do the same thing with Jesus on the cross. He refused it, but they offered him sour wine. Why? Because it would numb the pain, and as far as the Romans were concerned, extending the life on the cross was good. but that's what they were trying to do. And so there was that thought buried in the mind of people to use medication for that purpose. And when you stop and think about it, if a king is to be of sound mind, here's the exception, is what is being pointed out. The next one, a little bit tougher. Wine for those that are bitter of soul. And about the only thing I can really offer, and I'm open to anyone else who wants to comment on this, is that it is probably referring to the fact that his mother is telling Lemuel, don't act and behave like people that are associated with strong drink, associated with things that take away the ways of the world. He's saying, a king doesn't behave like that, is what she's saying. Stay away from it. And because typically, a person that is engaged in that kind of behavior, that kind of consumption, they're trying to forget their problems. Even the same thing happens today. People do that to forget their problems. Unfortunately, it tends to make the problems worse because they don't solve anything, they just make it worse. So, Brian.
I was thinking I was going to bring this up, that if you remember back with Hannah, Hannah was very bitter in her soul about not having a child. And if you remember when she went in to pray, she was actually accused of being drunk
Yeah,
by the priest.
there you go.
But she was bitter of soul, so that would have been something the priest would have thought. Okay, she's in bitterness here. Her lips were moving, but no sounds coming out. He thought she was a drunk.
Yeah.
In a drunken stupor.
Yeah, about the only other thought that crossed my mind is that people that are bitter in soul get down, it's so depressed. What's likely to happen? Unfortunately, thoughts of suicide often happen. That might be the one case I can think of where if you're trying to prevent a person doing something that is worse, you might engage in that, in trying to get them to drink a little bit and lighten the mood. But like I say, this is an area that I really don't know a lot about, and that's about the extent of what I can say. All right. As you go further, there are more admonitions that she gives to him as a king. Open thy mouth for the dumb in the cause of all such that are appointed to destruction. In other words, when you're looking at cases and you're deciding legal parameters, stand up for those that need to be stood up for, those that can't speak for themselves, and those that, quite frankly, are going to be taken advantage of. And in order for Solomon to do that, or for Lemuel to do that, he has to be of clear mind. The same thing happens in verse 10. Open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. Again, here are the cases where a person may come before the judge complaining about being abused or complaining about being taken advantage of. It's going to be the ruler's point that he's going to have to listen, think clearly, and think distinctly, and make proper judgments based on that. Brad.
This is exactly what Jesus condemns the Pharisees and scribes and the Jewish leaders of when he was walking on the earth. They were taking advantage of the widows. They were dealing poorly and harshly with the poor and the needy and the children. And he condemned them.
Yeah.
For that, calling them whitewashed tombs, clean on the outside, but full of dead men's bones on the inside. And when he talks in Matthew 25, I always get 24, 25 in there, about judgment. So, those on the right, when you visited me and helped me and did all these things, come. And then the others, to those who didn't, you're being judged. Well, we didn't see you that way. It was whenever you didn't do it for one of these other people
Yeah.
that needed it, you did it to me.
Yep.
He strongly judged. That's one of the main things that he judged them on.
Brian.
I was reading an article just before we went on vacation, and it surprised me. The article was entitled "Some of the Top
Yep.
cares about the poor.
And that's it.
Surprised me because it was like right at the top of topics that were brought in the Bible.
Yeah, something that a mother would be very sensitive to, and she's communicating that to Lemuel. It's important to her. All right. The next section, and this, again, it's more of a question. What do you know about Proverbs, particularly these verses 10 through 31? What are some, what did you say? It's an acrostic poem. How many letters are in the Hebrew alphabet? 22. How many verses from 10 through 31? 22. So, this is kind of where I'm going to pick up again and fall a little closer to Brian's material. But the way this is stated up here, what I did is tried to show you what verse it occurs in, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. In this case, it happens to be Aleph. And that little squiggle in front of the Aleph, that's the Hebrew letter. And each verse begins with that letter. Now, what's happened, I found this section really looking on the internet, looking for some discussion about this period. And although our word order doesn't quite match the Hebrew, and he's taken a little bit of poetic license to try to incorporate English first letters so that we see what is happening. But he does try and pick up the flow of it. And so you can get a feeling for what happens here. And as you go through verse 1, the other thing I want to ask you before we get too far into this, what one word would you apply to the book of Proverbs? If you could select one word, what would it be? Wisdom. What Lemuel's mother is doing is giving practical wisdom advice. You want to know what wisdom looks like? Here it is in practice. Here are some things that are done that would be considered wise at a practical level. And so bear that in mind. A woman of valor, who can find her? She is far above rubies. And we're talking about a woman who is strong, a woman who is capable, a woman who is wise, a woman who is motivated. Going to the next letter, this is the Hebrew word bet. Her husband trusts her. He trusts her judgment. He trusts what she does. He trusts how she does it. He trusts the decisions she makes. He puts his confidence in her that whatever the outcome would be, it's going to be for the benefit of the family. Next slide, third, Gimel. Good she brings him, never bad. In his trust for her, he's basically saying, you know how to bring good to this family. You're not going to bring evil to it. So I'm going to trust you to do what you think is best. Is kind of the idea. Her activities bring good, not evil. The fourth letter, Dalet. Diligent are her hands with wool and flax, working with eagerness. Because what he's pointing out here is working with wool and flax was a very common thing to happen in those days, because that was people always needed clothing. You always might want wool and flax to be able to make that clothing. And so it was a common way for a woman to be engaged in producing something that was important. At a little higher level, perhaps a woman's skills are not really along the lines of sewing and putting together clothing. Perhaps her skills are in cooking. Perhaps her skills are in servicing others. And you could go on and on down the list. And so the point is, whatever is appropriate for the woman of valor to do, she's actively engaged in doing that. So she applies herself to productive activities with eager hands. The next letter, hey. Her behavior is like merchant ships bringing food from afar. So she's planning ahead. She's realizing, here are the things that I need to provide these things to my family. And some of them may, in fact, involve going to merchant ships and picking up items that have traveled a good distance. She doesn't say, this is good enough. I'm going to do this amount and that's all I have to. That's not where she's coming from. She's looking at the things she has set out and what she wants to do for her family and wants to provide. She wants to give the best to her family. And so she goes and recovers those kinds of items and brings them back. Vave. Waking while it's still night, she provides food for her household. In other words, who's the first person up in the household? She is. Why? Because she realizes the prep that needs to go on in order to supply the things that are needed for the family. And as more and more people become awake, she probably said, I need you to go into the market and purchase XYZ. Or I need this to happen because I need it for the preparation for it. And that's the idea, is she's a person that is engaged in that. Brad.
It just remind me of, on my mother's side, my mother did this too, but my grandmother, was the story when she first came over from Germany and was working with her husband in a dairy here in Oregon. She would wake up before everybody else. This made me think of it. Before everybody else, go milk 40 cows. Come back in, fix breakfast for all the dairy farm hands. Then go back out and milk more cows, and that was her life on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Of that rising early and working hard.
And that's a perfect picture. And it's not, even though we may say it like that and think, oh, the hardship of that, undoubtedly she did that because of the love she had for her family. And that's what's important to draw out of this. The next letter, Zayin. She is zealous to plan. She buys a vineyard and plants it with her earnings. In other words, once she has accomplished something, she doesn't just sit on her hands and wait for the next thing to happen. She's looking at, okay, here are the things that have been accomplished. Here are what could happen if I had this. Well, maybe this is buying a vineyard. Okay, I'll buy the vineyard and then we'll use the vineyard to produce the grapes to produce the next step in what she's planning. She's always thinking, she's always planning, she's always aware of what is being provided to her so that she can make the best use of it. That's the idea. Het, characterized by strength. She makes her arms strong for task. Okay, I was looking to see if I had an extra comment on that. But there's the idea is that she doesn't claim that I'm too weak to do this. She's characterized by the strength and the activity, and she finds a way to accomplish it. All right. Tet, trading well. She finds her business profitable. Her lamp does not go out. In other words, she doesn't waste time. She doesn't wait until something breaks in order to maintenance it. What can I do with what I have to make it better, to make it more useful, to make it so my family benefits? That's what's going on in her mind all this time. Yod, she's yielding her hands to the spindle. She works with her fingers. She gets involved. She isn't the high-level manager that is removed from the activities that are going on. She's right there working with the workers alongside them, seeing what happens, seeing where things can be improved, seeing what else can be done, and applying herself and demonstrating to those that are helping as well that I'm not going to sit in my lofty citadel looking down and saying, do this, do this, do this. I'm going to get right down into the dirt and work with you on this. That's the idea. Calf. Kindly she extends her hands to the needy. With what she has, when those that are needy, she notices them. She extends her hand kindly to help them, to extend favor to them, to give to them. All right. We're only halfway through this, by the way. Just a second. Yeah.
These verses especially makes me think of in the New Testament, and they're mentioned fairly significantly, but always usually in the background are the women who traveled with Jesus.
Yeah.
How industrious they were, how at least one of them, if not a couple, had means and provided from those means for Jesus and for his disciples, and looking out for them and taking care of them, and always going and traveling with them and serving them in whatever capacity was needed.
Yeah.
That those women did a lot.
And they're kind of the unsung heroes, aren't they? We don't read a lot about that activity. I'm sure that's what happened, but we don't read a lot about that activity, do we? All right, let's go on. The next letter, Lamed. Looking at the snow, she has no fears for her household, for they are clothed. Why is that? Why doesn't she worry about the snow? She's prepared ahead of time. She's got her winter clothes. She's got her gloves. Her family has the winter clothes available. They're ready. They're prepared. No matter what the weather might bring, she's prepared for it.
It's not
Brad.
It's not just the bare minimum either, being as clothed in scarlet. That
Yeah.
would have been expensive, well-made fabrics. It wasn't the bottom of the barrel.
Yep. Yep. Okay. The next letter, Mem. Made for herself are coverings, fine linens, and purple are her clothing. In other words, she takes what she can provide and what her husband gives her and makes the best of it that she can, so that when she's adorned with these things, she is giving honor to her husband. This is what my husband helped provide for me. This is what God has blessed me with. And so you've got this idea that she's not dissatisfied with her state in life. She's satisfied with it, and she's trying to use it to the best of her ability. All right. Nun. Noted is her husband at the city gate where he sits among the elders. This one, I'll come back to this in another section in a moment. He would not be able to sit at the gate if she weren't doing what she's doing. Let that sit with you for a while. If she were a complainer or if she were forcing more on him, he would not be able to sit at the gate. Well, the elders of the city are. Talking with them about the benefit of serving God, about how God's law might be applied. That was a very honorable kind of position. All right. Sembec, she produces linen garments and sells them, supplying merchant. In other words, she doesn't just provide for her family. To the ability she can, she makes more. She makes garments that can be in turn sent to the merchants and sold for others. So her efforts are benefiting other people. We did that one. Ayan, outstanding strength and dignity. When you saw her walking down the street, there's a sense of strength, of capability that she is carrying. She's carrying the honor of being the woman of the house. She is demonstrating dignity. And people notice that. Pay. Prudently she opens her mouth. Getting back to our ideas of practical wisdom, she doesn't speak until she's got something to say, and when she says it, it's important, it is wise, it is demonstrating wisdom. That's the idea of this. She watches, or Tasadi, she watches over her household. She's looking for what threatens her house. What is basically ready to break? What needs attention? What are some pitfalls? Here are some things that my family will be facing. Are they prepared to face it? Kind of like we ask about the snow. She's prepared ahead of time. She'll be thinking about that very thing and saying, my family needs a new coat or something else. And she'll begin putting the materials together to make for it so that they can have it before the need arises. Quaff. Her children rise and bless her. But not only her children, so does her husband. Resh. She is remarkable in that she is regarded as excelling all other women. Remember, we started out, who can find an excellent wife? There's already a comparison set up. There's the excellent wife, and there is everybody else. And what Lemuel is saying is she excels all those that she's compared to. Shin, she is acclaimed as many women do noble things, but she surpasses them all. And then lastly, in verse 31, Tav, total credit is given for her work. In other words, her work is known at the gate, where the elders are. They know that she is a capable individual. They know that she keeps her promises. They know that she loves her family. They know she's engaged in looking out for others. So it's just an incredible thing. But like I mentioned, this is not a checklist. Guys, you're not going to find a woman that has every one of these, just like she's going to look at you and be evaluating all the characteristics you have. So what are these things? They're things that you can strive towards, that you can work towards. Go ahead, Linda.
Makes me think about how important the man is in this verse, because if he is making her life stressful or not taking care of what his job is, it's very difficult to do all that she's doing.
You're absolutely correct. The only reason I didn't bring that up is I was trying to show favoritism to the ladies on this. Brad.
I'd like to maybe have us, as many prophecies and wisdom literature does, as double meanings. There is a spiritual aspect that this, in my opinion, applies to. these are qualities, these are all things the church and those who are members of the church should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you
We as the
very
church,
much.
as the bride, striving to be the worthy woman for the husband who sits in the gates, who is Jesus.
Okay. I've got 5 minutes. There's one last thing I want to get to. And Linda, you came very close to hitting upon it. What did you say this chapter was? What did you describe it as, this section? An acrostic is actually the actual word. Believe it or not, that's not the only poetic element here. It's also chiastic. And what that means is, I did a lesson here, a couple of years ago, looking at John chapter 1. And what a chiastic poem does, it starts with a baseline verse. In this case, if you look at verse 10, an excellent wife. And then it builds up to the pinnacle, and then it comes back down. And so what you wind up with is, if you look at the base of the pinnacle, in this case, if you look at an excellent wife, well, what is that excellent wife? Well, we can go through all these things and discuss it, yes. But the overall point is, an excellent wife is the woman who fears the Lord. Those are the two parallels. And then as you build back up through this, it talks about her worth is above jewels, and that is compared with charm and beauty are deceitful, but her character, the way she acts, the way she behaves, are far above rubies. And so it isn't just a matter of looking at these verses rattling off. There's some structure here, and there's a point to where we're going with this. Her husband trusts her. Well, just as her husband trusts her, her children praise her, and her husband blesses her. Still the same parallel. You see how we're building up and we're building up? She works. And not only does she work, she looks out for other ways that she can apply her skills for the benefit of the household. She extends her hand to the poor. The teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She's aware of the poor. She's sympathetic to the poor. She tries to respond to the poor. She stretches out her hands to the needy, and she opens her mouth in wisdom. All right. To finish this off, this is the rest of the chiastic poem. She stretches out her hands to the needy, who I talked about. She opens her mouth in wisdom. She is not afraid of the snow. Notice the comparison. She smiles at the future. It's not that she isn't worried about it. She even smiles at it because she knows she's got God's promises there. She knows she's prepared for it. Her household is clothed with scarlet. This is getting back to the point of she makes not only do with what she has, she makes the best of what she had so it can be most highly presented. Strength and dignity are her clothing. Those are things that demonstrate her capability, that are honorable, that show to those around her, this is what is happening in my life. She makes coverings for herself. And she not only for herself, she supplies belts to her tradesmen. So she takes care of her needs, she takes care of the needs of others. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. She makes fine linen garments and sells them. And where it converges, the husband sitting at the gate. Because of her, he is able to be there. and be respected and converse with those. That's how important this is. And I think it's important, too, to recognize that what Lemuel's mother did is that here are some practical applications of wisdom, which now is going to go all the way back to Proverbs 1, and it's going to bring all these things together and tie them together with a neat bow. Because wisdom really was the point of this whole book. Thank you. I presented the material this way mostly because I needed to be able to figure out how I was going to present it to you, and that's why it's the way it is. Brian probably hadn't seen that before. So, all right, thank you all.
Good evening, everyone. It's always so nice to hear the chatter between the class and the service. Before we present an invitation to you, we'll sing song number 943. Number 943. We're going to sing this through twice. Todo soul, I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, oh my soul, rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, oh my soul, rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. Please mark your books at number 851. Number 851.
Evening. I was talking to a preacher friend of mine down in Tennessee a couple weeks ago, and he turned me on to a guy that I'd never heard of, and I asked Rick if he's ever heard of him. I think I asked Ann too. B.C. Carr. Has anybody ever heard of him? From the South. He passed away in 2001. I've been looking for sermons online to listen to. I haven't found any, but I found a lot of his writings online. And one of the things I found is an experience that he shared Sunday evening, an experience that he said changed his life. And after listening to it, I can only imagine it's something I've had in my mind for weeks and weeks, and that is a Sunday evening after services. He was headed home on the highway, and he come upon a wreck in front of him. So the highway was shut down, big wreck. And as he got to looking, he noticed one of the cars that was in the wreck. It was a young man who he had just spoken to at church services minutes ago. And he was able to, the paramedics hadn't got there yet, but he was able to go and comfort this young man. The young man was trapped in the car. And he comforted the man for a couple minutes, and then the paramedics got there. And he said as he was walking away, the last thing that he remembered is this young man had a hold of the shirt of the paramedic and was screaming at this paramedic, "Don't you let me die. I'm not a Christian." And he said that young man's voice will be, he said it, for the rest of his life, he could hear that young man's voice screaming at this paramedic, "Don't you let me die. I'm not a Christian." He said this young man's mother and father, great Christian people, all of his brothers and sisters, great Christians. But this man thought he had another day. Thought he had another day. And as I read that, I thought about Luke chapter 12 and verse 16, what my Bible calls the parable of the rich fool. Young man who, or I assume this was a young man, but thought he had another day. We'll go ahead and read it. Luke chapter 12, beginning in verse 16. And he told them a parable, saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, what shall I do, for I have nowhere to store my crops? And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? Thought he had another day. I think most of us, if we think about it, find ourselves living like we have another day. We have plans for tomorrow. Every one of us have plans for tomorrow. We don't know if we have tomorrow. You know, over in the book of James, it talks about James chapter 4 and talks about our life being a mist. And I think we read that verse and we think, yeah, our life's a mist, you know. In reality, it's pretty short. But don't sell that verse short. One thing about a mist is you don't know how long it is. You set a pot of water on the heat on the stove with a lid on it. Take that lid off. Take it off 2 or 3 times. Each time that mist will be different. There's a lot of variables as to how long that mist lasts. That's how our life is like a mist. There's a lot of variables in our life. We don't know how long it's going to be. I think you all know I turned 50 this year. Doesn't seem like it's been 50 years. I can manage, and when your oldest done, the date probably seems like it's what, 15, 20 minutes? It's a mist. You don't know how long it really is. So it's a gospel invitation, but really it's a life invitation. You know, think about your relationships. Your relationship with your wife or with your children, with your brothers or with your sisters, with your parents. Is it what it should be? If it's not, there's no time like today to fix it. You don't know if you'll have tomorrow. I don't know if I'll make it home to see my wife tonight. Life is a mist. It's gone like that. You don't know how long you have. Is your relationship with your God what it should be? Is it as strong today as it was in the past? Or is there something in your life that has caused some separation between you and your God? Now's the time to fix it. You know, I wasn't there, of course, but the last couple weeks I've had that young man's voice in my mind. Don't let me die. I'm not a Christian. Those are powerful words. I encourage you to think on those in the days to come. And if there's need for you to be baptized tonight, or a need for you for prayers, if there's something in your life that needs to be changed, we'd love to pray with you tonight if you'll come forward as we stand and sing the song of invitation.